So, Mrs. Reitano, you are coming to Prague with some country-specific recommendations from the European Commission for the Czech Republic. Could you talk a bit about what they are?
Yeah, this is the third year in a row that we have issued country-specific recommendations to the Czech Republic and to the other 26, well, not really all member states receive them, actually. The ones that are very, very problematic in our program countries do not. But I would say that apart from those, there are more 20-odd member states that receive recommendations. What exactly, yes, is the spirit of this whole exercise, I suppose, is the issue. It is not that Brussels comes here and dictates some very specific, minute details of policy that the countries are supposed to follow up. It's rather to be seen in a different perspective, because the member states have committed themselves to this framework. They have tied their hands together, and they have decided to mutually influence each other's policies, because the recommendations are proposed by the Commission, and even this, on the basis of a consultative process with the member state as well. The Commission identifies areas that may be problematic or where policy has challenges exist, and suggests some policies to address these problems. And mutually, this process goes through a series of steps to arrive to the Council, which are the member states altogether, deciding mutually on a package of measures. So in a certain sense, they bind each other and bind themselves to these recommendations. And the idea is, of course, to improve the functioning of this group of countries, which we call the EU, European Union, but also to avoid that areas where problems may be arising become so important as to impact on that country itself, so requiring intervention from the other member states to support it. And we have seen plenty of examples of that in the recent past, but also to ensure that spillovers from one member state to another are positive ones and not negative ones. So this is a little bit the idea, to create a coordination forum of policies. I think that broadly this is the idea. So
thank you very much. And Mr. Czech, please could you describe what's the whole process of getting through the European semester for the recommendations?
I think Elena just pointed it right. I mean, the EU member states, upon the entry into the EU, they committed themselves to coordinate economic policies. So I think this is the basic legal framework for the EU semesters. Why? I mean, Elena mentioned spillovers, and there are important spillovers, affecting, because we are all interconnected in Europe. The Czech Republic is the most open economy, one of the most open economies in the EU, and of course, what we see here in the Czech Republic, in the Czech context, is that the economic developments in the euro area and in neighboring countries are pretty much influencing, the prospects for the Czech economy itself. So the spillovers are important. These are not only real economic spillovers, but also financial spillovers in the financial markets. The financial markets, this is what we see, in the current context of the euro area crisis. And second, the introduction of the European semester was also part of the policy response, just to, this strengthening of the framework was also policy response in terms of that the Europe needs to grow out of the crisis. It was perceived that the general government debt in some countries is fairly high. The sustainability issues, etc., etc. And of course, the smart way just to tackle this crisis is to grow out of the crisis. The denominator in the debt ratio, if it goes higher, of course, the debt is more bearable. So this is the basic intuition. Second, EU semester itself, it's a process. The bureaucrats know, but what is really important for us is the output. The EU semester is, in terms of the process, is why semester? Because it's a main half year that is running from the end of November till June, early July. So that's why we call it semester. It starts at the end of November when Commission issues a communication that is called Annual Growth Survey, and this Annual Growth Survey identifies the main issues that are to be dealt with at the European level. So I mean, for instance, for this European semester, 5 issues have been identified.
So the Commission gives it to the Council?
No, I mean this is just a communication. This is public communication, and it's up to the debate with member states, with stakeholders, with European Parliament. Everybody, you know, in the European context can express itself vis-à-vis this analysis. It's a macroeconomic analysis, but it's a really vital analysis. I mean, this year there was 5 issues that were identified as a core issues for the European economy. I mean, the first one was the fiscal consolidation, that we need to continue fiscal consolidation. Second is restore lending to the economy, which is not that painful in Czech Republic, but I mean overall it's meant to be for the EU as a whole. The third one was public administration, etc., etc. So so these issues were put for discussions at the European context. I mean the Council member states were discussing this, European Parliament was discussing this. I mean, we presented it here. In my capacity, I was presenting this at the national level here to stakeholders. I mean, the office of the government was organizing so-called roundtables, and I was also presenting this. So, I mean, in this process of the European semester, I mean, this discussion led to the March European Council, and actually the March European Council endorsed these 5 priorities for the EU economic policy making, for the EU as a whole. And now we are by the end of the March, and in April, the member states are supposed to deliver so-called national reform programs. And of course, these national reform programs should reflect first the priorities that are agreed, you know, I mean, by all at the EU level. And second, they should of course address, you know, the recommendations from the last year. You know? So I mean, these are kind of this is kind of the process that leads towards adoption of the national reform programs. I don't know to what extent you are aware about that the government has prepared this together with so-called convergence program that gives kind of the fiscal outlook. And this fiscal outlook should be aligned with this national reform program, because I mean, of course, I mean some reforms might be costly, so this should be aligned. So this is in this process, and of course, we have assessed, you know, the national reform program together with the convergence program, and that's why Elena is here. I mean, on the 29th of May, we published the assessment of both programs. That give, I mean, the national reform program gives once again the path, foreseen path for reforms for the country. Second, convergence program gives the fiscal path, and this assessment is reflected in so-called staff working document that we also published on 29th May of package, and at the same time we issue recommendations for the country for next year. So this is the process, and this process is continuing by later this week. There will be European Council. I mean this package
will discuss those, right?
We'll discuss those and finalize, and the final legal. Of course, in the course of June, it was discussed in different council formations. It's going to be discussed also, I mean, by European Parliament. And at the beginning on the 9th of July, ECOFIN will formally adopt the council recommendations. So this is the process. I mean, but this is, I mean, as you say, I mean, this is rather for Eurocrats. I mean, what is for us is important is the substance that Elena
Could we talk about a subset for the Czech Republic?
Yes, indeed. And if I would, if I may add something to what the feat that has just been accomplished by Zdeněk, because it's difficult to condense all this in a few minutes. But what matters as well is the coordination dimension and the duration dimension. And when Zdeněk talked about the 5 priorities, those 5 priorities were confirmed from the previous year. So it's not that every year we come with a new set of priorities. There's a strong continuity element, because there's a strong policy continuity element, and because in a certain sense we are in the same, pretty similar, if not perhaps for some aspects, continued, so worse, policy situation. So in this sense, those 5 priorities have remained, and the areas where of course, these 5 priorities are the same for all, but they are declined differently in each country, and the priorities for some countries are more, public administration reform, for example, and for others could be fiscal consolidation. So, which is a growth-friendly fiscal consolidation. That's a very important point to stress. So I would say that for the Czech Republic, some of these areas are more important than others, and most of the areas that we have identified last year are still issues this year. We have added something else on energy, but on the whole we have covered broadly the same areas as last year.
Could you talk briefly about what's in the report, let's say?
Oh, well, the staff working document, so this report, which is a technical report, it covers a number of areas, basically the ones that are broadly covered also by the recommendations. It is a product of the Commission services. So it's a Commission services document, which forms the analytical underpinning for the recommendations. So it gives the reasons why we arrive. These reasons are condensed in this legal document in what we call the recitals at the beginning, but it's very, very short. And the work is much bigger underlying that. And it's work covering various areas, fiscal policies, taxation, long-term sustainability issues, so pensions and healthcare, which are very important. It covers the area of employment and the issue of employment in this country, which concerns essentially women of childbearing age. It focuses also on public administration reform, the anti-corruption strategy, and I probably am missing some issues, but I mean certainly the Public Servants Act, which is a very
great deal in the Czech Republic.
Yes, it is a great deal, and it was part of the commitments originally made by the Czech Republic when it was seated. So we're talking about more than 9 years ago that you joined. There is education, which is a very important issue because of the potential of the Czech Republic, of course, and there is also the issue of regulated professions, which is new, and energy efficiency. But what puts all this together is really what Zdeněk said at the beginning, the issue of growth. Because all these areas have been identified as areas that in some way or another action can be taken in some of these areas to improve the growth prospects of the Czech Republic, because the Czech Republic is not by any means a problematic economy. We know those, we know which ones they are. Czech economy has Czech Republic has made huge progresses in some areas. I would say in fiscal consolidation for sure. It is the prospects are greatly improved. But in other areas, it has an untapped potential, which is going to affect its long-term growth prospects. So we are facing a growth problem, exactly like when I came last year, which has a dual dimension. There is a cyclical problem, so the short-term growth, which is clearly an issue and may be caused by several factors. And then there is the longer-term growth issue. So what policies can be put in place to kickstart this recovery, which we don't see, but also to ensure that the Czech Republic is on a path of sustainable growth, which is higher than the one it seems. The potential growth of the Czech Republic is boosted, because currently it seems that somehow this is not the case, and the prospects in the medium term will be.
We say that there's a long-term recession in the Czech Republic in some way.
Oh, or certainly an issue of potential growth, which is low, lower than would seem to be in the possibilities of the Czech Republic if it made a more, stronger, more assertive turn towards this knowledge-based innovation economy, which is, in our view, one of the areas where actually the Czech Republic has the most potential. But to do so, I mean, it has to create the basis in terms of education as well. Where actually performance is slipping. That is an issue that we have identified. So that explains a little bit the philosophy of that we're saying. And in terms of public finances, yes, indeed, progress has been achieved. That is undoubtedly the case. But when we recommend, to enhance growth and enhancing expenditure, it's because actually looking at certain data, for example, the investment of the whole government, not just the central, but the whole general government, we see that over the recent years it has actually decreased, and this has an impact in terms of growth, which is non-negligible. Education expenditure needs to be obviously preserved, and to do this, then this links with the recommendation we have on taxation, where what we are recommending is, yes, indeed, you have you have had to, because of consolidation, short-term needs, to increase indirect taxation. That is better than increasing others, but there are some areas where you could find room to broaden the tax base. So basically, there is the treatment of the self-employed. I think this is explicitly mentioned vis-à-vis the employees. The recession cannot explain the fact that the number of self-employed is actually increasing, but revenue collected from the self-employed is actually decreasing a lot. So how can these two issues be squared? There is the issue of, for example, recurrent taxes on property, where the Czech Republic has room to increase, and these are areas where actually we're not recommending that you should increase taxes. By all means, this is not the idea, but these are areas where you have scope for increasing taxes if that allows you to then reduce taxes elsewhere and to support the right kind of expenditure. It cannot be sustained in a longer term, such a reduction of investment, and we also make a call for making better use of the possibilities that are given by European funds. That is one of the
long stories in the Czech Republic as well. Yeah.
Yes.
I would like to ask, because we are talking about the specific recommendations, but I would like to ask about the whole process, because I do understand that let's say member states' political leaders do decide what they do with their taxes, and they have to decide. Let's say the bureaucrats, so-called bureaucrats, can decide. They are just consulting, or they are just monitoring some issues. Whether this process of the European semester, which is in power for 2 years, whether there's been some changes in the process of the European semester for the last 2 years, because it has been set up 2 years ago, and whether does it work since 2011 in the same regime, I would say, whether it has gone through some changes because of the crisis.
Maybe I can say something. This process was born of a crisis. A little bit, this is what Zdeněk said. So it was born out of the idea of getting a collective but country-specific response to the crisis. The bureaucrats, again, as I said at the very, very beginning, indeed we identify the areas, but the ownership is of the member states through the fact that they have decided collectively to accept these recommendations and discuss them, and mutually bind each other to and themselves. So this is not. There is a continuous dialogue with the authorities, of course, and there are, of course, because each political authority is a revealed preference of a society. So, of course, there are some areas where you can see from outside that you feel that action could be taken, but it's not the political priority of that particular country or that particular group of stakeholders who are in power. So, in a certain sense, this aspect has to be considered, but it's not. That should not stop us if we identify a problem such as, for example, long-term sustainability. The fact that a government does not wish to take any measures should not stop us from saying, well, this is an issue, and then it's to be seen.
I can add a couple of issues on this. I mean, you ask about the evolution of the European semester. Of course, I mean, the European semester is, as a process itself, is getting better. I mean, I mean, this is the third semester. I mean, over past 2 years, you know, in fact, as you said. And of course, I mean, first, I mean, the recommendations are getting more precise, you know. I mean, this is what you see in the evolution of recommendations, not only for Czech Republic, but also for other countries. It has been very much influenced by the evolution of the legislative framework for the supervision of the economic policy coordination at the EU level. Notably, what I speak about is the adoption of the six-pack. Again, the Eurospeak. It was adopted in December 2011, and this six-pack is putting more. I mean, it brings innovations in the area of the stability of, I mean, of the fiscal surveillance, and second, it brings a new dimension, so-called macroeconomic imbalances procedure, which is also recognizing the notion that I mean, in the past, you know, some problems were due to due to problems in the fiscal area, but also the large macroeconomic imbalances, as we have seen, for instance, in Ireland, with the housing markets can have a very negative impact on the fiscal balance. You know, I mean, for instance, Ireland went from around 20% of GDP gross debt to more than 100% in 1 year. You know, because of the unwinding imbalances, and this. Of course, I mean, this new methods of supervising are also getting integrated into the semester. Now you see that the MIP is also very much aligned with the process of the European semester, and also the recommendations goes in this direction. Second or third, I would say, on this is that the people are very much, I mean, the people in the third year, I mean, it's also, I mean, this is what I see here on ground, are very much, I mean, are more and more into, I mean, they know more about the European semester and about the recommendations. You know, this is clear. You know, I mean, what I see here in daily work, that the people call, they are interested. Why do we have such an opinion? What we think about the issues that Elena mentions, and we are very much happy to discuss these issues and just to steer the debate. You know, to steer the debate at the national level. I think this is absolutely essential, that the member states, you know, speak about the problems. They are able to benchmark, you know, the performance, you know. So we provide comparison, you know. We have special comparisons for economies across the member states, and the member states clearly see, you know, where they are, how they are performed vis-a-vis the others. You can benchmark them. You can benchmark them. So this is the fantastic opportunity for the people. I mean, for the national stakeholders, for I don't know. Industry associations, for trade unions, you know, just to compare themselves, and they learn more. I mean, this is the exchange of information. And last but not least, I mean, this of course is pretty much connected to Europe 2020 targets. Okay, we try to attain this. These objectives are somewhere, you know, not upfront, but somewhere in behind this thinking.
I think you would like to add anything.
Yeah, I think I would just like to emphasize one thing that Zdeněk just said. The fact that it's country specific doesn't mean that it doesn't have a horizontal dimension in some sense. This comparative dimension, the benchmarking part, the fact that it is not that we are searching for an absolute, level of, say, education, or we are searching for a collective improvement and a comparative improvement. So that is why the comparative assessment matters, and that is why this is not the view of, say, Brussels. It is really an exercise that is conducted on a horizontal and country-specific dimension, and that's what matters. So that is why, if a government, for example, decides, well, this is not my priority, they can very well do so, but that does not stop this exercise still from addressing certain issues and suggesting certain ways to tackle it.
All right, thank you very much for both of you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.